Elections Update. I'm Maeve.
And I'm Tom, and on today's episode we'll be talking about student engagement.
We'll also be joined by the VP of Democracy, Resources and Sustainability, Bethan, Dovey, and the Head of Station from BurnFM, Joe McDowell.
There's been a massive change to you. There's been a massive change to university in the last week. The banner dropped in Mermaid Square, there's cardboard all over campus, and sugar levels are at an all-time high with all the sweets being handed out.
But even with all that, levels of student engagement are still a worry, with only 16% of students turning up to vote last year. The Guild has tried everything to engage students, from BuzzFeed articles to a free fab for the college with the highest voter percentage.
Remember, if you need any information about any of our candidates, go to guildelections.co.uk and be sure to check out our 60-second candidate videos on the Guild TV YouTube page.
Or, if you're ready to vote, go to guildofstudents.com/vote. Voting closes at 4 p.m. this Friday, so make sure you don't miss out.
And now let's go to today's Inside Elections, where Dom has been finding out about student engagement.
Hello and welcome to the second edition of Inside Elections for Guild TV's election update coverage. I'm Dominic Ryder.
Now, just the other day on the social networking application Echo, an anonymous user posted a message containing offensive language about not caring for Guild elections. This really does beg the question, how much is being done to engage students with the Guild elections, and do students actually care?
So I think there's the stuff that centrally we do as the Guild, so we make sure that we send out communications towards students. We try and get out on campus. You might have seen some of the stalls around campus, but then ultimately it is also up to the candidates and the campaign teams themselves to get their name out there, get their policies out there. And I think that sort of over the last couple of days, and today the first day of voting, there has been a lot of people out on campus. So yeah, I think it's really good.
I think there's actually a lot of stuff which goes on. We had the 8, 12, 14 teaser campaign. We're running a free superfab for the college with the people with the most votes. Sometimes people don't want to be engaged. Sometimes actually people don't necessarily get what happens in the Guild for the rest of the year, so why should they care about one election? And generally actually voter apathy is actually massive amongst students in general, like only 44% voted in the last general election, so it is a really tough sell sometimes.
Numbers of voters in the elections has decreased over the past few years, and it appears that there are multiple reasons for this.
I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess it is quite a lot of effort. You've got to go to the website. There's a lot of candidates to choose from. I think some people are a little bit alienated by the fact that there are like 15 different positions. They're not too sure which ones they should be voting for and which ones affect them. So, and I guess just general apathy.
I would say I think sometimes like the characters that people create around their like election campaign is obviously important for publicity, but I think that like overtakes a lot of their policies a lot of the time, and so people don't necessarily take it seriously what they're doing.
Probably because they don't know enough about the subs and what they do in their role in the Guild.
Kind of what, like, I just feel like they don't really feel represented by the people, I guess. Like, I know it sounds quite cynical, but I think a lot of them just do it to put it on their CV and say that they've been part of the Guild.
I've talked to some of the people who say they're not going to vote, and they just won't see what the Guild does for them. They just basically don't see how the elections are relevant to them and how it affects them in their life when they do their degree.
Voting closes on Friday the 6th of March, so please get your votes in at www.guildofstudents.com/votes, or for more information on candidates, check out guildelections.co.uk. And hopefully if you've taken anything away from this today, it's that Guild elections are important and they do matter.
We're now joined by Beth and Dovey. How are you doing this morning?
Very well, thank you. So the theme of our show today is student engagement. So how do you think that the Guild's been engaging students over the past year?
So this year's sabbatical officer team have actually done a lot of work around engaging students from literally the first day. We've had one of the most successful welcome weeks that we've ever had. We did a lot of door knocking, a lot of doing stuff on the ground, making sure our faces were seen, talking to students. Generally as well, the biggest thing we've done to engage students is actually make wins for them. Like lots of cool things have been happening around the year, around printer credits, just little wins here and there as well. We did Speak Week, which was to go out and ask students what they actually wanted to change. If students know that you're listening and you can clearly show that you're doing what they want, they're going to get engaged, they're going to get interested.
That's very good. And why do you think that the Guild elections are such an important part, like the sabbatical officers being kind of like a breach between the students and the university?
Well, I mean, as a sabbatical officer myself, we do, well, our whole entire job revolves around doing things for students, making sure that we're working for students, taking care of students. So it's important that students get to choose who it is that's doing that job for them. If it's someone they don't like, someone they don't want, they might do things that students don't want. It's important that, you know, we are the student union, we're here for the students, that the union is doing the work of the students.
And particularly as it's election week, why do you think that the election turnout is so low?
In previous years, there's been a number of reasons, mostly because students don't know it's happening, it's not been very well advertised. There's also because a lot of students are busy, they've got other things to worry about, other things on their plate. Some students as well do get quite annoyed with the cardboard, with the door knocking. But this year, things are looking up, I think. We've got a record number of candidates, nearly double what we had last year. The Guild has been doing a massive push since before Christmas even. And we've already seen like huge engagement with our social media, huge engagement with candidates out on the ground, and I think things really are looking better this year.
That's very good. And what would you kind of like, is there any, what do you do as a SAB officer? Sorry, I didn't really get the resources, democracy and sustainability.
It does what it says on the tin, so I'll work backwards from, I say my least favourite, I love them all, but to my most favourite. So sustainability obviously does what it says on the tin. It's about making sure the Guild's a green organisation, also making sure that we're sort of financially stable as well, because we are a business, we do have to remain viable. But I do a lot of stuff around working on the Green Impact Award, working with a group called Energise Birmingham, who look at sort of keeping your houses energy efficient. Resources covers all the money, so we look at the Guild's finances, again going back to the whole sustainable business thing, and stuff around our commercial services. Democracy, which is kind of my big ticket name thing, covers all the political stuff of the Guild, so that's elections, making sure people feel represented. So obviously there's lots of work I've been doing this year around that, and also hopefully that's going to continue next year, even though the name is changing to Representation and Resources Officer. I just want to point out that just because sustainability is not in the name anymore, sustainability is still part of the game.
We do need to keep it sustainable.
Of course.
And what would you say to someone who's seen what's going on with the election, as considering standing as a SAB officer next year?
I would definitely ask them to come and talk to whoever the current officer at the time is. I think it's important that people get an honest assessment of what the job is like. I love it. It's absolutely great fun. It is a hard slog though, it is quite difficult, it's quite tough. I think people should have their expectations managed and know what they're letting themselves in for, but I would encourage anyone that's thinking about it to come in, talk to one of the officers, we can give you some advice. The biggest advice I do is, if you are thinking of running, you're not sure what position for maybe, write down all the things you want to change about the Guild and then see which kind of position all of the things you want to change fit into. That's what I did and that's why I chose to run for this position and won.
Yeah. That's very good. Thanks for talking to us. We'll be back with you in a second. But now we go to Holly for another edition of On Campus.
Good afternoon. I'm here on a very windy campus and we're going to be taking a look at how the students have been engaging with the campaign so far. There are loads of signs around campus, so let's go take a look at them all now.
It's all very well and good having posters and cardboard signs up, but if nobody knows where to vote, then what's the point? So, to vote, log into your MyBHAM account and click on the Guild of Students Elections Vote Here button. Alternatively, if you go to guildofstudents.com, you can't really miss it.
It's so important that students remain enthusiastic and get involved within these elections. From what you've seen so far, there are examples of posters and of endorsement all over the university. So let's hope that this continues and we'll keep track of it all through the week. But for now, back to the studio. I've been Holly on campus.
Welcome back, and now we're joined by Joe McDowell, who's head of station at BurnFM. Thank you for joining us.
No, it's all good morning.
So, as head of station, what have Burn really been trying to push for with the Guild elections? What kind of shows have you been putting out to get more aware?
Yeah, we've been, as we always do, we've really been working on student engagement. We really believe kind of the value of student media. Our major bit has been working closely with media groups like Red Brick, like Guild TV, and we've been working in terms of getting kind of awareness out there. We've been promoting it on our hourly news blast that goes out every day. So that goes out from 11 o'clock and then is on 10 o'clock, sorry, and then every hour after that. And so what we've been really trying to do is trying to engage students and trying to engage them in the issues rather than kind of candidates themselves. So obviously, as a kind of media group, we sit in a strange position where we can't endorse any candidate, but we can endorse the elections itself. So our kind of role mainly, we believe, is to try and engage people in the debate and kind of facilitate that kind of conversation. And that's how I think we've really engaged students, hopefully. And then obviously our biggest night comes on Saturday with the actual elections broadcast live.
Very much forward to that.
Yes, indeed, which is always a great night. But yeah, I think it's been an interesting campaign so far, especially running in tandem with the referendum as well. I think there's a lot of conversation out there, but whether that's translated into votes, I'm not sure yet. But it's an interesting kind of, people are talking, and that's a really positive thing.
Do you think that the student media groups have been an effective way to engage students about the election?
I think so, yeah. I think it's a very kind of, it's a personal approach to kind of marketing what the Guild does. I think if the Guild markets something of its own, I think it comes across the institution marketing it, whereas student media is students. You know, we work purely for the love of being involved in the media. We love doing what we do, and I think students can relate to that. I think especially if we get people chatting about the elections on air, on our kind of shows, which aren't really kind of elections based, they're more general kind of shows, but people talking about them, it shows that the students are engaged. And I think you know, a lot of credit has to go out to all the student media groups, because I think it does give it in a more engaging way than other kind of organisations do, and I think it is incredibly valuable, as it is for kind of all kind of politics in the Guild as well. I mean, the Guild TV live stream, for example, at Guild Council is invaluable, because it gives people a way of engaging without being able to go, and they just wouldn't have if we didn't do the work that we do. So yeah, I think student media is very important.
Do you think that there's an almost limiting factor with us not really being able to interview any of the current candidates, as we don't want to really show endorsement for one person or another?
I think yes and no. I think if we could engage that kind of way, I think that would be kind of a positive thing, but it would have to be very carefully managed. I think the way that Guild elections work, it will be a valuable tool in terms of promotion. It will be a valuable kind of way of engaging with candidates and kind of them reaching out to students. But you just know it's one of those things where somebody would not be available on that day, or we wouldn't be able to kind of ask the right questions, or someone would be upset with the questions we asked. And I think this is probably the easiest way of just making sure that both kind of the candidates get a fair deal from student media, as much as we engage people as much as we can to vote in the elections with them. But also I think it's a conversation they need to have with students. And I think being out on campus, knocking on doors, I think actually being there, chatting to the people they'll be representing, can't be underestimated. And I think that direct engagement is something that we really should push. And I think that can't be lost in the system. And I worry that perhaps if someone did one interview with Burn or gave a statement to Red Brick, they think that would replace what they should be doing. And actually I think what's really good is that people are actually out there engaging with students, and I think nothing should take away from that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. How do you think, I know that some candidates in their manifestos this year have said that they want to change the way that they promote themselves. For example, like banning cardboard across campus, and I know that some students have been... I know
you have feelings on this.
Well, you... I'm sorry. I know that some students are dissatisfied with the amount they say that the campus transformed into rubbish. Like a rubbish pile. Do you think that there's a better way we can do it, or do you think the cardboard is an effective way?
So I did have a think about this, because I think, so people do get annoyed with the cardboard, and I worry it's going to disengage people, but there isn't really any other way to do it that is free and fair. Look at banners or pieces of wood, for example. Normally you have to pay a lot of money for those if you want decent coverage. Cardboard you can just get from anywhere. And the thing about campus looking like a mess, yes, it might look a little bit dodgy during the week, but at the very end of the week, for those who don't know, at 4 o'clock, all of the candidates go out and they clean up all of their publicity. If they haven't cleaned it up within 5 days, they get a fine from University Estates. Now, campus is normally completely clear by about 6 o'clock on a Friday evening. I actually do think that if we got rid of cardboard, it would completely sort of ruin the free and fairness of the election, because only those candidates with enough money to buy enough fabric for banners, or buy enough wood, or buy enough other corrugated cardboard, like metal, that kind of thing, I don't know what else you want to use, only they will be able to run a successful, visible campaign. I think that this is the only way to do it in a free and fair way.
See, I disagree slightly. I take your point in terms of engagement. I think what the Guild should do is rather than giving a budget, is they should provide an elections pack. So within it there should be 5 or 6 big white sheets, for example, perhaps a pot of paint and then colours you can choose. And the Guild should provide that, so every candidate starts with basic pack, and that's all you're allowed to use. But also I think being free and fair, I think there's no cost to going and talking to students. There's no there's incredible value in going out and saying, look, I'm going to stand outside the library, I'm going to stand outside the arts building, I'm going to stand by Old Joe, and I'm going to chat to students. And actually, I think that engagement, the personal approach, rather than just painting a load of cardboard and putting it out and then leaving it there, I think you can't underestimate that. Though I take your point in terms of visibility, that's key. But I don't know, I'm kind of more in the kind of anti-cardboard camp, I have to confess. Not because it's messy, I just think it gets in the way. And I think in that time where students could be thinking up really good policies, could be really engaging with students, they're painting cardboard, they're sitting in darkened rooms trying to get pieces ready, you know. And I've been involved in campaigns and I've seen how it's like, and it is a tough slog. And I think, if anything, that can be the almost that first hurdle some people don't get across. They think, oh my God, I can't get as much cardboard out as Tetris Tim did, or Frankie did last year. I wouldn't be able to do that, so I can't engage. Whereas if you took that away and you gave people, we'll support you, we'll give you the means to run, and then we'll make it free so you can just be the candidate you need to be. I think that could be one of these barriers we take away, and suddenly you find a lot more people running from a lot of different backgrounds.
I would actually agree with a lot of that. I think the problem is how we get to that point, because I would much rather see it so that we get the same turnout or higher with students going out and talking. I think the problem is at the moment, because we are kind of stuck in this cycle where people build their brand with their cardboard. I actually agree with you. I think that just the cardboard with the logos on, pointless. If you're going to have cardboard out there, it's got to have your name, your position, and at least one manifesto point, because otherwise people are not going to know what you're standing for. And I've heard students saying they prefer signs with manifesto points on. I think it would take like a staggered approach. So we'd have to, like, over a couple of years, kind of scale it back, change the culture until we've completely changed it so that we are getting the same result from students going out and talking. So I think that is the most valuable thing, and I agree with that. I like that idea about the packs. But what about, take you up on that?
What about the idea that there's no physical sort of promotion and it all happens online, because candidates provided with ability to submit a written manifesto, a visual manifesto, and a 60-second video clip. So what about the idea that everything's just like the voting does, everything takes place online?
Well, I think the first port of call should be, as it always should be, guildelections.co.uk, provided by your wonderful student media groups.
Yes.
And they've done a wonderful job. Redbrick, Burn, Guild TV really came together on that, and that's something that really shows how good it can be. Because, I mean, I know I'm involved in it, but I think they did an absolutely fantastic job. And I think it's a very kind of easy to use, very kind of engaging website. And I think you're right. I think that engagement in terms of that is key. I have my own reservations about the staggered release of candidates, and I don't think that was very beneficial to that overall. But I think actually that social media is a positive tool. But again, it's slightly impersonal sometimes. I mean, you're putting a Facebook status out is one thing, but actually talking to somebody isn't quite the same thing, even if it's exactly the same information.
Great. Well, thank you very much, you both, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
And unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but join us again tomorrow morning at 10.
In the meantime, why not check out all the candidates on guildelections.co.uk, and don't forget to vote on the Guild Students website.
And we'll see you tomorrow.